Welcome to Beyond HR, where we go beyond process and policy and explore how AI is transforming the way HR actually works. I'm Shveta Malhan.
And I'm Jeff. And today we're going to dive into how AI is changing the game in performance management.
We're going to explore how AI changes the game from writing better feedback to spotting development gaps faster. We'll show you exactly how tools like ChatGPT can help HR teams move from admin heavy to insight driven.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to this. So let's get into it. And let's actually do it with some live demos and some real world like use cases, right? That you can basically start using today if you want.
Absolutely. Jeff, before we do that, I was thinking that maybe we can paint a little bit picture of current state. Now, like performance is one of the most dreaded processes in an
Indeed.
HR department because of how admin heavy it can be. And various organizations can be at various degrees of innovation and various degrees of maturity as they are evolving the performance process. But I wanted us to start with like a very basic performance process and what it looks like in an organization and try and close the imagination gap on what the future state could look like. We don't have to dive into designing for the future state. That's a conversation for another day. But at least we will know where we are at today, where we could go, and how using ChatGPT in our current state today can get us closer to that future state in small baby steps.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, I mean, I think HR is so buried in spreadsheets and forms and policies, and we often spend so much more time facilitating than actually influencing performance. And I'm sort of like, isn't that what we're hired to do? Isn't that what sort of our core purpose is? And that imbalance is really frustrating. I think it's frustrating to HR folks who want to have a much more strategic value and have a much more kind of high human touch interaction with managers to help them kind of like be able to articulate these things, but also to kind of take a look at data, taking a look at how are we actually delivering this process. Is it fair? Is it balanced? Are people basically, using the same literacy relative to the performance modules and so forth? So, yeah. So I think, I think that's the whole point now is that we have to really kind of like, flip a switch here and get GPT involved.
So I'm going to flash a screen here,
Okay.
Jeff, and I'd love for you to weigh in on, does this resonate? Because I started painting this picture of what does the current state of HR look like.
I'm exhausted looking at it, and it's exactly right. I mean, there are tools out there that I've used in the past, like Culture Amp is an example where it has sort of like these automated kind of planning and scheduling tools and things of that nature. But still, you spend so much time coordinating with everybody, trying to get the timing right. Do we do this, twice annually? Do we do this quarterly? Do we do it just once? But what about the other? You know what I mean? There's just so much time and thought and effort that goes into it's like organizing a wedding, honestly. You know what I mean? There's just so many little minute details. And none of those are about having the time of your life at your own wedding. It's just like this enormous crunch and pressure to kind of get everything right, please everybody else, line everything up. And by the time it's like launched and ready to go, now it's kind of follow up, chase, get information back, help people with, difficult conversations and everything else. But it's, I don't want to say it's low value work, but I want to, because it's work that obviously has to get done and it has to be done well and it has to be well planned and thought out because the last thing line managers and employees want to wrestle with is a broken process.
Yeah,
And that's not fair on them. But
that's
this
right.
is exactly what we spend our time doing as
Yeah,
opposed to things that are so much more impactful.
that's right. It's like 85% of our time when we are running this process goes in
Yeah.
actually running the process versus working on how we can make the experience better for the employees who are going through the process or managers who are supporting employees' performance on a daily basis. We don't have the capacity to be strategic in a typical performance process. Imagine with AI in the mix, it helps us flip this equation where we
Mm.
free up our time and capacity where we can be 85% strategic. And the administration overload is now taken over by the machines. And when I say administration overload, it could be things like automatically collecting data around
Mm.
performance, connecting it to the business data, like projects we work on, time that we spend on projects, errors or wins that we have while working. and not just collection of that data. Now AI is becoming so much more sophisticated that it can also do the sense making on that data on its own. And then once it's made sense of the data, we can now have things like chatbots, nudges to nudge people on, where they need to course correct or pivot. An
Yeah.
example that I take is, imagine there are people in your team who are continuously working beyond the 9 to 5 hours. So you automatically start getting insights as a manager of that team and the HR department, that as a red flag that there's something off in that particular cohort, that particular pod, that particular team, that people are working beyond the scheduled work hours. So it gives us an indication to, maybe, I mean, it doesn't solve the problem for us, but at least it automatically
It
nudges us to
highlights
say
it, right? Yeah.
something is happening, go investigate further. So
Yep.
that saves so much time. Like otherwise, in a typical current state scenario, one, we might not have the data to get that insight in the first place, and two, if we
Yeah.
do, then we would be spending so much time just wrangling that information and making sense of it to even identify which teams are burnt out or on the cusp of burning out, or are overloaded. So AI can take care of
And that
that.
list, that issue with recency is really critical to be able to kind of address an anomaly,
Yeah,
literally as it's happening is so much more powerful because you're also then stopping it before it becomes, a boil, or something. Sorry, it's a pretty horrible analogy, but but before it becomes something much more, challenging and difficult to unwind.
that's right. And of course, our development also becomes so much more personalized. Like we've
Mhm.
been, one of the things that our hands have been tied on is broad stroke solution when it comes to development of us humans. We all have our unique development needs, and AI will help facilitate that personalization of development. Now, all of this,
Mhm.
so much time for HR people to play in that strategic space, to be
Yep.
that catalyst with the business where we can spend more and more time in broader workforce planning, workforce
Yeah.
development, making strategic decisions and choices around our workforce, as everyday things are taken care of by machine and performance administration is taken care of by machines.
Yeah, you're absolutely spot on. Because the future, I mean, I just want to kind of make this point clear too. We talk a lot about AI and the power of AI and how it can kind of lift and shift and take things over for us and automate. I mean, what I think you just illustrated, which I think is really powerful, is the fact that AI isn't a full replacement for HR at all. In fact, I think it's a gift to frankly take over very competently, if well trained and structured, obviously, but to basically take over the stuff that is a bit more low value, but nonetheless still needs to be done well, right? And exacting and everything else to actually then kind of help us kind of intercede and kind of wake us up to challenges, issues, problems that are occurring along the way, where we then can get involved, look at the data set and really kind of understand in three-dimensional detail, what's going on here, in what context, and why is it potentially happening, so that we can then have a really good, powerful, positive impact on fixing that, kind of ameliorating those challenges and issues and hopefully raising the game for everybody. That's where I've always ever wanted to play. And HR probably feel the same.
Yeah, absolutely. So, with that, let's segue into doing some AI magic, because
Cool.
I know that we tag team on this last week, and you created a synthetic data set of a fictitious organization who's gone
Yeah.
through a performance process. And then what I did was I created a custom GPT and uploaded that data set into custom GPT along with some instructions on how that GPT needs to kind of show up for me and you when we are interacting with it. So our playground is ready, and let's play in this playground. And
Cool.
our hope is that through our playing in this playground, we will inspire HR team members to experience firsthand the power of using AI and augment themselves. Essentially, that's where we are
hmm
going.
Indeed. Can I just real quick before you jump into this thing? It's so funny because you raced right past I just went and invented my own GPT so that basically we could do that. Can you just explain to people what that process actually means and then why does it matter? Like what makes that better for what we're about to go through?
Yeah, a really good question, Jeff. So the reason I typically create GPTs is because if we just interact with, of course, now every day, whether it's ChatGPT, whether it's Gemini, Perplexity, Grok, whichever large language model we end up interacting with, they're becoming more and more sophisticated by the day and they have memory and whatnot. But I like using GPT because it helps me train the large language model with the context that I want it to focus on.
Oh,
So
okay.
in our case, we've created a custom chat GPT with the data set that you shared with me. So
Okay.
now it will interact only with that data set when we are probing and
Ah,
asking questions. And the
okay.
second thing is, once you create the GPT, you don't have to set the context for that GPT again and again. Otherwise, what you'll
Right.
notice is in chats, if you have to give GPT an instruction, you have to give the full context so that it gives you the answer that you're looking for. And imagine if every chat you have to recontextualize, it can be quite painful. So
It
having a
is.
GPT makes sure that you don't have to spend time on setting the context for that GPT,
Got
and
it.
your focus is more on interacting with GPT, and it knows where you're going and what you're
Mm.
looking for.
I get it now. Yeah, you're absolutely right because that is the bulk of a prompt, isn't it? It's always ever like, oh, by the way, and here's the big picture, and here's the narrower picture, and here's the stuff I need you to be thinking. Your fingertips are bleeding, like typing out the prompt. You're like, oh my god, no, that's very cool, very cool, good. All right, so we have a
Awesome.
GPT.
All right, Jeff, here's our blank slate. Now,
Okay,
imagine this GPT has been trained. I called it HR performance. We can end up naming it whatever works for us. And I've uploaded the spreadsheet with the data here. Now,
okay,
let's just play a game here. I'm a minion who's going to work on your behalf and maybe even prompt you questions here and there. Why don't you wear the hat of an HR business partner who now has access to this magical playground?
okay.
What comes to your mind first? What are you most curious about now that the data is uploaded?
Well, so, and if I remember correctly, when I put that data together, I literally basically copied the structure of any typical HRIS, kind of HCM to system. And I basically filled in all of the sort of column headers. And then I built out a section that was just about 2025 performance data. And I had sort of like 4 or 5 or 6 categories. I can't quite remember which. And they were things like peer up perception and teamwork and goal sorry adherence to kind of goals and development and managers rating and overall rating, and I think I threw in an average, mathematical averaging column just to kind of like kind of find out, are we like far off in terms of how the manager looked at it versus what the mathematical average looks like and that sort of a thing. So it was simple, but now I kind of want to know stuff. And I put this together pretty blindly. I didn't like literally go line by line. I think it was like 202 employee records in there. So I randomized some of it, but let's see what it kind of kicks out. So, all right, this is going to be about feedback rewriting assistant, right? How often do we as HR people go through a performance process and we then start going through the results, right? Just to kind of like sense check and make sure that everything is okay, and find actually there is a chunk of stuff that is not okay.
Hmm.
Managers didn't have time or didn't want to go into great detail, and unfortunately just kind of threw some relatively low value comments in there, which of course is going to translate horribly to the employee who's going to be like, oh, okay, so we don't really care about this process then, is
Hmm.
what you're saying. So anyway, so this is going to be about feedback rewriting.
Okay.
And if you can act as my assistant, that'd be amazing. So
Okay.
here's a scenario. So a manager submits like vague feedback, like Sarah is doing okay, but needs more to be more proactive.
Yeah.
Okay. And so I guess we have to like paste this into the GPT and say, can you rewrite this to be more specific, growth
Yeah.
focused, and bias aware? So
Okay.
what? Let's see what happens.
So, okay, let's do an experiment. Let's ask ChatGPT to find the most vague feedback from the
Okay,
database.
cool. And do you have to like tell it like what column in the data you want it to look, or can you just basically start communicating with it and say, just as you are, find the most vague and poorly written feedback?
Yep. It
Okay,
is
let's
as
see.
simple as talking to another human being. I mean, now we have to put ourselves in the shoes of, like, the mindset should be that we're not doing the work, we are using technology to do the work on our behalf.
Got it.
So here We don't have to specify columns. We don't have to give precise instructions. It can
Ooh,
do it on its own, but we need to tell it exactly what we want it to do.
oh my gosh.
So here's our list.
Wow. So it literally went, not just found a vague comment, but it literally found like the top 5.
That's right. ChatGPT is smart enough to scan through the database and it understands what I'm looking for and it'll go and hunt that information for
But it
us.
understood the concept of vague.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like it understood the meaning of it, and then it understood to apply to looking at over 202 different employees. That's
Yeah.
amazing. So that's amazing. Okay, cool. So we've got now 5 good examples of vague feedback. Now what do we do?
Okay. Now, what we can do is we can pick one example and ask it to, can you show me the full comment for
Okay.
this one? So, see, automatically it's also telling us where the problems in this comment are.
Oh gosh, that's amazing.
And it's automatically prompting us for the next thing that we can tell it to do.
Okay. Okay. So it's
So,
actually it's like moving on. It's moving us through um, a process of analysis. It's actually telling us what might be wrong here. Can I just read this real quick? So Oliver performs well in almost every category, but in achieving goals. Okay, he struggles with the OKR method and stated that he's a good performer overall, but didn't need to be babysat by others who know less about his work than he does. God, that sounds like it actually came from a real person. So the feedback is problematic for a couple of reasons. It's vague in that performing in terms of what performing well means. So what is he actually referring to? It lacks specific examples of struggles with OKRs. Okay, that's important because it's probably possibly not just Oliver that's having this issue. And the quote about not needing to be babysat could be seen as inflammatory or unprofessional without context. Yeah, fair point. Oliver's a bit like that, so we have to
yeah.
take him with a grain of salt. Bless him. Okay, and now it's moving us forward and say, would you like help rewriting this to be more constructive, balanced, and actionable? Okay, interesting. Yeah,
Yeah.
let's do this.
And all I will tell it is, yes, go ahead.
Wow, that's it. That's your fancy computer instruction. Right. So now it comes back, Oliver. Holy cow, this is amazing. Right. So now Oliver consistently demonstrates strong performance across most core responsibilities, particularly in technical execution and collaboration with his immediate team. However, he faces challenges in aligning his work with the company's OKR framework. For example, several of his recent goals lacked clear metrics or cross-functional alignment, like clear metrics and cross-functional alignment, which impacted overall progress tracking. That's interesting. When discussing this, Oliver expressed a preference for autonomy, which is valuable, but it's important that his contribution also support shared team and company objectives. So going forward, additional support in goal setting and clearer expectations may help him better engage with the OKR process. Okay.
So
All right,
see
go on.
now here we are looking at this data set from an HRBP lens. But imagine this is a coaching moment where HR can be that strategic partner to the business. Now they've identified from the list all instances where the feedback wasn't delivered the way it should be delivered in a performance context. So here's an example of what a rewritten feedback looks like. But now if you're a manager, you can definitely use ChatGPT to say, I want to give feedback to my employee. These are the pain points. These are the strengths. These are the wins. And here are the gaps. Can you write me a feedback? And it'll write the feedback for you based on your specs. But now from HRBP context, they can also not just identify the feedback pieces where there's room for improvement, come up
Mhm.
with an example of what a more cohesive, comprehensive feedback could look like and go to that person who wrote this feedback and coach them on how to write the feedback. And you can seek help from ChatGPT as an HRBP in that context also. For example, you can just interact with ChatGPT. Here, I'll show you an example and we
Okay.
can say, I am an HRBP. So this is where just-in-time learning can also happen for you as an HR business partner.
Indeed. Oh my goodness. Here we go. So this is great. It's like it's giving you an entire playbook, isn't it?
Yeah.
That's hyper specific to this particular issue, which is great.
Yeah.
Because then, Oliver might look at it one day, the manager might look at it, whatever the case, and they're going to be like, yep, this isn't just generic off the shelf, information that comes out of some book.
Yeah.
somewhere or off some YouTube video. This is basically germane to my specific issue. And so therefore, hopefully it sticks. And they're like, hey, you know what? Thank you for that. I was stuck on how to properly address it.
Yeah,
Very
absolutely.
cool. I love
And
it.
again, it knows where we are going and it's already telling me,
Yeah,
ChatGPT is prompting me as a user that do you want me to write an email that you
that's a bit
can
spooky,
use
don't
for
you
the
think?
manager,
That's
right?
amazing. That's crazy. But it makes sense, right? It's sort of like, yep, I've seen this before. Let me set it up for you.
Yeah.
There we go. Let's see.
And the point here is that we don't have to copy paste everything that we get from ChatGPT. But imagine, I mean, the way this email is written might not be your style,
Right.
but at least it gives you a starting point where 80% it takes you 80% of the way and you have to spend time tweaking it 20%. Imagine the amount of
Mhm.
time it saves for you.
I mean, honestly, I can't tell you how many times, and you probably have war stories yourself and plenty of scar tissue to go along with it. But I can't tell you how many times I have sat there until my forehead was bleeding, trying to wade through, 200 responses. And they're not, we made it simple in this particular synthetic data case, right? There literally was like two boxes or were two boxes. One was manager comment. And then the next one is, I think, action to be taken, next actions to be taken. Most of these processes generate, I mean, just pages of written, kind of insight and commentary, observations and all sorts. And you're sitting there trying to kind of manually go through this. I mean, even if you had a magic tool to go through it, this takes it to the next level, which is not only is it going to go through it, but it's actually going to help you interpret it. It's going to help you understand what's right and what's wrong about it. And then actually say, here are some, actions to be taken to kind of like address it, make it better. I mean, you could whip through this literally in a matter of 2 days and probably get a view on everybody and basically write yourself, enough content and coaching intervention and engagement with the people managers that would cover off your next 2 weeks, as opposed to drip feeding the painful, gosh, you didn't say that in the comment, did you? Okay, please do this. Please. You know what I mean? Just like stomping out fires and dealing with sort of like psychological ambushes and all these other kinds of issues. Nobody likes that process at all. And what you've
Yeah.
just done is illustrated that it doesn't have to be that way at all. In fact, the intelligent use of, a GPT, given the context and the data points, can basically set you on your way to, plowing through the hard stuff real quick. Let the machine do it, right? And then basically give you the insights. You adjust. It's not always ever going to be perfect, is it? I mean, there's going to be the occasional, kind of made up bit, but it won't be crazy. It's not like you're jumping down, Alice in Wonderland's rabbit hole or anything like that. I'm like, awesome. In a matter, how long did it take us? 5 minutes?
Yeah.
5 minutes. Five
Yeah.
minutes, and we know more about Oliver and his issues and how to go address them and how to communicate, to his boss. And it's done. Job done. That is wicked.
That is, that is. It's like once you start using technology to and bring it into your daily workflow and see what parts of your work you're not enjoying and delegate that work to the machine to do,
Yeah.
the more you do it, I mean, at least that's the feeling that I have gone through.
Yep.
I've been using it for last 2 years now, that I feel like in moments where I'm the most stuck and using machine catapults me in directions which I had not thought about. I feel like I have superpowers.
Yeah.
It
Well, that's
really,
exactly
really
it.
truly
Yeah.
augments your starting point.
So let's do some more. I'm excited. Okay, come on.
All right, let's do another scenario.
Let's do another one. Let's do
We
another one.
might have time for just one today, but let's definitely do another scenario. Tell me, what
Okay,
are you
cool.
curious about now?
Okay. Here we go. Here we go. So, okay, so here's the issue. So we basically have a small HRIS file, a reasonably small one. I would like to start to understand patterns. And what's always been super interesting to me is understanding where potentially we have managers who are either upgrading or downgrading people relative to some level of a mean, if that makes sense. Because oftentimes managers may very well come to these processes with very different philosophies about how tough we should be with people, right? And I've worked for, I'm sure you have too, worked for organizations where the message came down from on high, from the CEO or from the CHRO. And it was like, look, We've had this problem in the past. We give way too much credit to everybody. Our bell curve,
Yeah,
traditional thinking, is way off. Everybody's a superstar. Nobody needs improvement. Come on. Please be a bit more harsh, be a bit more realistic, be
yeah.
tough. So I'm just interested though to see like where might those patterns emerge? How would we go about looking at that?
Uh,
4.0
yeah, right
for this?
now
Okay,
we're
cool.
using 4.0.
Yeah, which is kind of good for lots of stuff, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, there are tons other available, but we're not
Yeah.
getting into that
Yeah,
today.
we don't. Wow.
Okay.
Wow. If I was an HR person looking at this, I'd be like, oh,
Yep.
we got
So,
issues.
so you see, it's already telling me that it can go and dig deeper and give me specific names of those managers and
Please
employees
do.
as well.
Yeah. Blimey. 84 entries show manager scoring. Okay, here we go.
Show me this data. I'm just curious to see this data uh, department wise. Let's see which visualization it picks for us.
Indeed. So that's interesting. So you just said show me, and
Yeah.
that just leaves it up to the GPT to, okay, give you a bit of a
Okay.
table here.
So it showed it to me as a table. Let's expand and see. So it's showing me the list of all the departments and
Hmm.
it's showing me the count of downgraders, neutral, and upgraders in that department.
Okay.
So but the beauty about this is that I can ask it to create it in any chart. And if I am not sure which chart to use, let's see.
Hmm.
I want to present this to an exec. Which visualization would work best?
Okay.
So see now, if I'm new to visualization, it tells me about which type of visualizations exist.
I love it.
I learn the language. So the more I use ChatGPT, I'm also learning new things which I might not have typically learnt about. So now if I want to use heat map, for example,
Yeah, let's do heat map. I was going to pick that too.
can you show me the heat map for this data? And you can make spelling mistakes, you can make grammar mistakes in your
Yeah,
prompts.
I noticed that.
It
It
will
just reads, whoa, what
it will
is this? Wicked. Okay, talk to me. What am I looking at here?
So
All
again,
right.
it changed the information that it showed in a chart to me in a heat map where 10 is so let's see what is 10 versus 0 if we don't oh if
There
we
you go. What
don't
is
know the scale. So that means events management, this team here.
the manager rated employees significantly lower than their peers did? Is that what it's saying?
Yeah,
Yeah. So the
help
manager is
me
like overly
read
tough.
this heat map as it looks very complicated to me.
You're not alone. Bless. That's funny. Oh my goodness. So it gives you a complete key as to how to interpret everything. Look it
Yeah.
through.
And if we don't like this visualization, if we can't interpret this, imagine putting in front of an executive and trying to
Right.
explain to them.
Yeah.
So GPT is already prompting me, would you like me to generate a simpler chart?
Yeah, let's do that. That's a good
Yes,
idea. Yes,
please
please.
make a simple chart.
I love this. It's so much fun watching this amazing technology. Whoa, here we go.
Now, this makes sense. I can read this much more clearer.
The
Like, for
stacks.
example, in accounting, the bulk of leaders are giving downgraded ratings and few give upgraded rate are upgraders
Yeah.
and the yellow ones are the ones who are
Just play
consistently
in the
neutral.
middle all the time. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Fascinating. This is really interesting. So it looks like we got serious issues, potentially in accounting, a little bit in customer service. Engineering, though? Wow. Excuse me, engineering, information technology. Interesting.
Yeah,
Maintenance and field services and sales. Sales, you'd expect it, wouldn't you? Everybody's so tough
yeah,
on each other. And it's either in sales, everybody's tough on each other, or they're actually really kind to one another, knowing how difficult their jobs are.
yeah,
Very interesting modalities here.
yeah.
Fascinating. There's
Let's
so much
see.
you can do with this. So what? Okay, so let me. Okay, go on. Go on. I want to see what you're up to.
Can you predict attrition?
Oh,
Let's see what it comes back with. So it's telling us that it can't predict attrition based on just this data set.
which is good because I would
Yeah.
struggle.
Yeah.
I can. I mean, it's interesting, right? Because what it does tell me right away is we definitely have some issues in terms of upskilling and addressing manager thinking and behavior around this for accounting, for engineering, excuse me, for a couple of the teams.
Yeah.
And so that's an immediate diagnostic. Suddenly, boom, I can be a lot more strategic and I can jump straight in and try to kind of make sense of something with some level
Yeah.
of urgency. Yeah, that's very cool.
Yeah. So maybe for today, we will park it here and see how this lands with our audience.
Wonderful. No, that makes great sense. So we hope today's episode gave you a glimpse into the art of what's possible when you combine your HR expertise with the power of AI.
And in future episodes, we'll dive into more variety content, including performance and other areas like learning and development. So let us know in comments, which direction would you like us to pursue?
Absolutely. And make sure to follow, to subscribe, and to share this with your HR team. And if you want sample GPT prompt set data or visuals from today's episode, just check us out in the show notes.
Thank you for joining us today. Until next time, keep going beyond HR.
Take care, everybody.